So I've been shooting Fuji for a few months now, and I picked up what everybody claimed to be one of the best lenses for the Fujifilm system, especially if you're into portraiture. The Fujifilm 56mm f1.2. Now this is one of Fuji's high-end primes, so I'd expect it to have really good build quality, and this thing does not slouch at all. It's full metal, really nice little heft to it, but still extremely compact. Beyond the metal construction, looking around the lens, it has that standard Fuji aperture ring, which I am really a huge fan of. I love these manual controls. It also has an electronic focus ring, which sucks if you're into video. They're not good for video, but on some Fuji cameras, you do have the ability to make it react more like a linear focus spool whenever you're doing manual focus on this thing. So that is nice. It's not perfect, but it's a much better solution than I found on my old Sony cameras. And of course, you have your lens caps and your lens hood, and these are all plastic, and the lens hood actually snaps on, which is really nice. I know there's a few other Fuji cameras where you have to screw on the lens hood, which is really weird. Though do keep in mind there is no weather sealing on this lens, so don't go out in the rain with this because you're gonna ruin your, was it $900, $1,000 lens pretty quickly. The depth of field you're gonna get is similar to an f1.8 on a full frame camera, as well as the focal length. This is closer to an 85mm if you're using a full frame camera. So it's basically the perfect go-to portrait lens, and I'm a huge fan of taking portraits, so this was kind of a no-brainer for me to pick up. That being said, I am still extremely new to the Fujifilm system, and there's some quirks with this lens and a lot of the Fuji lenses out there that I was personally not aware of. Now, the first quirk that I realized about this lens, and again, this is something that's pretty standard for a majority of the Fuji lenses out there, is it does not have a linear motor. It has a stepping motor. Fuji makes linear motor lenses. I don't know why they still have lenses out on the market today in 2020 that use a stepping motor, and they release new lenses with stepping motors still. On the 16-55, it has a linear focus motor and it works fantastic. Like, I have no problems with it. If you're gonna be using this lens for video, I highly suggest that you use it only in manual focus and go into the menus and make it react more linearly so that you can have more standard focus pools that are repeatable, because the autofocus performance is not good for video. It hunts way too much. It's also extremely loud. And I even had some difficulties with photography. Like, sometimes it would hunt a lot to get a photo, like pulse in and out, the kind of standard bad motors thing to do on any camera lens. It's really unfortunate. That's honestly the biggest downside to this lens, because sharpness wise, this thing is tack sharp when you can get it in focus, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And of course, if you stop down, it's going to get sharper and sharper, but the fact that it's extremely sharp wide open says a lot about the quality of glass that's in this lens. And another weird quirk with this lens is the minimum focusing distance is absurd. Like, it is not going to be great for macro photography or macro videography at all. The minimum focusing distance is about 2 feet. Of course, you can get adapters of things to kind of cut down this minimum focusing distance. But taking a step back and talking about autofocus again, on my X-T4, for some reason, when I'm taking photos, sometimes it just misses the focus completely. Like, I have it on eye autofocus, and for some reason it just misses the eye entirely, and then the face looks completely out of focus. It's something you don't notice until you take it into Lightroom or you take it into Capture One and you zoom in on the face and you realize the entire face is soft. Like, it is not tack sharp, even though I know for a fact that this lens is tack sharp wide open. The autofocus system on the X-T4 is so good, but the autofocus motors on this lens are so bad that they can't communicate perfectly, and it's just something that I think we're just gonna have to bear with as Fuji users, because until Fuji decides to update their lenses to stop using these crappy old stepping motors and start all switching over to linear motors, it's just something that we're gonna unfortunately have to live with. But all in all, my experience using this lens, I've been enjoying it. I think this is one of my favorite lenses to use just because it's so much fun, and the bokeh that you get out of this thing is so beautiful. I just am disappointed constantly when I take my photos in to edit and I see that the face is a little bit soft, and that's the biggest complaint. And if you're not really into portraiture, skip this lens completely. If you do not need a portrait specific lens, pick up their cheaper options, or you do want a portrait lens, but you don't need it to be this crazy aperture. You can have something a little bit closer to f2.8 perhaps. Then probably pick up the Fujifilm 50mm to 140mm f2.8 lens. That would also be a really fantastic portrait lens. You're just not gonna get as creamy as a bokeh as you would with this thing at f1.2. But if you already own this lens, lens, or you consider picking up this lens, or if you have any ideas or thoughts of how I can improve my usability of this lens, please leave a comment down below. I really appreciate it. And if you thought this video was helpful and you liked it, please consider liking the video or subscribing. It really means a lot to me. But anyway, my name is Joshua Munoz. Stay sexy, and I'll see you sometime.